What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weer. I love talking about movies, and we've officially made it through a full quarter of 2024, with March of 2024 coming to an end. And since March of 24 came to an end, it's time to rank all of the brand new releases that I had a chance to see in March of 2024 from worst to best. Now, just like in other previous ranked videos, this isn't just about my list. I would love to know how you rank March of 24. So let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of March 2024 and how you would rank all of the new releases that you had a chance to see. I love seeing your list. I love interacting with you guys. I'm not just saying that. I make these videos because I love talking about movies, and I love talking about movies with you guys in the comments. So don't forget to leave your ranked list of March 2024 from worst to best. And finally, guys, if you want to watch more of my thoughts on the movies that we're going to talk about in this video, well, I've done a quick reaction to all 11 films that I had a chance to see in March of 24, and I've done full reviews for 8 of those 11 films. So I would love for you to check those videos out, especially if you want more thoughts, since I'll be giving you my quick thoughts in this video. With all that said, let me rank March of 2024 from worst to best. Coming in at number 11, guys, is actually a movie that carried over from February of 24, so this may be cheating a little bit. I wanted to watch this movie in February, didn't have the chance, watched it right after the 1st of March, after I put out my February ranked list, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put it in the March ranking, we'll see where it lands. And unfortunately, it landed at the very bottom of the list. At number 11, the worst of the worst for March of 2024 is Stopmotion. Stopmotion is a movie that had an interesting premise to it, like most horror movies do, and I was just kind of hungry for horror movies, so I wanted to see this one really bad. But it's about a girl whose mother creates stop-motion videos using claymation, and the girl sort of takes up the mantle of the project that her mother was working on when her mother gets very sick. So once she takes up her mother's work, this little girl in her apartment building sees the project she's working on and convinces her to make it a horror stop-motion picture, and then the things she creates start to come to life. So it's an interesting premise overall, but the third act in this movie goes to the gore for the sake of gore, and that's just not my style.
Oh, that's nasty.
Now, a lot of people like that in horror. There's a lot of gore people out there that just love gory horror movies, so you may enjoy the third act of this movie way more than I did. But personally, I'm one of those people that thinks you can have a lot of gore in a horror movie. I'm all for it as long as there's a point, as long as there's a reason. And it just seemed like when you get to the end of this movie that they didn't know how to finish it, and they were like, all right, we're just going to make it extremely gory, and then we'll tell people, well, you just don't like gore. That's what it felt like. I didn't like how they wrapped this thing up at all. I didn't think there was a need for all of that gore for the sake of gore. And so with that said, it's number 11 in March of 24. Coming in at number 10, guys, this would have been the worst of the worst had I not included a February film. So technically, the actual worst of March 24 would be Blumhouse's Imaginary. So it's another horror film, again, kind of starved for horror at the beginning of the year, wanting good horror, and we did not get that with this movie. This is the second Blumhouse outing this year, the first one being Night Swim, which I actually liked a little bit more than this movie. Imaginary was just a mess. It's again, cool concept, just like stop motion. It's a cool concept about an imaginary friend that is potentially a demonic entity that's actually possessing this toy bear and going after this family. So it's a cool concept, but then in execution, it falls apart completely because you have these jump scare scenes followed by this exposition dump from an old lady character, and then jump scare scenes followed by an exposition dump by an old lady character, and it just continues on this path throughout the movie until they get to toward the end of the third act, where the old lady all of a sudden has this wild plan where she had a plan all along and it was evil.
Not a great plan.
Just so they can kill her off so that you don't feel bad about them killing the old lady who's been exposition dumping the entire movie. It was a jumbled mess of a film and a horror movie that didn't need as many endings as it had. I was ready to leave this movie after the first ending, and when they faked you out and they're like, actually, there's going to be another ending, and then there's going to be another ending after that, and then maybe the imaginary entity never went away at all. And it was just like, my brain started to melt in the theater watching this film. So Imaginary is number 10. At number 9, we have the Netflix movie Irish Wish. Now, before I get into the negatives for this movie and why it ranked so low this month, I do want to say that I'm very happy for Lindsay Lohan. She seems to be turning her life around as an adult. She got married, she has a kid, she's getting back into films, and she got away from that negative past that she had so long ago, and I'm very happy for her. However, the movies she's picked so far have been rough to watch.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
They are essentially Hallmark Channel movies put on Netflix. And there's definitely an audience for that. There's definitely people that are going to say, oh, I really like a sweet rom-com Hallmark kind of movie on Netflix. Plus, it's centered around a holiday. This one is called Irish Wish. So it was centered around St. Patrick's Day, dropped at St. Patrick's Day. And it's just not a movie that was made for me. It's one of those movies where it was fine on paper, I'm sure. And there's going to be people that liked it. But I need a little more substance other than Hallmark Channel rom-com. I need more than that. So since it didn't work for me, it made it to number 9. At number 8, guys, is another movie that went straight to streaming. This one went straight to Amazon Prime, and it is Roadhouse.
Roadhouse. Roadhouse.
But this time, instead of Patrick Swayze playing Dalton, they brought in Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, Jake Gyllenhaal is one of my favorite actors of all time. I'm a huge fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, and so when I heard he was attached to this movie, I was very interested in it, and I just wanted to have a fun, cool time with Dalton and a Roadhouse. And unfortunately, Dalton is the only thing in the movie that actually worked for me. The rest of it didn't. Whether it was the plot of the gangsters trying to take over the Roadhouse so they could knock it down and then create something new, which is just a weird plan for a bunch of drug-running gangsters, or the subplot involving Conor McGregor, who doesn't seem to fit in with the rest of this film. Like, all of the characters, you could say, are kind of on the same level as Dalton throughout this movie, but then you bring in Conor McGregor, and he's like this super wild card, and he might have worked as that character had everything else been ramped up to 100, but since his character is just at 100 while everyone else is at like a 10, it doesn't make a lot of sense. He comes into this movie and is completely tonally different from everyone else in this movie. I didn't enjoy his performance in this. I just felt like they told Conor McGregor, hey, do whatever you want. You're Conor McGregor. Do your thing. We'll work the movie around you. And it didn't work for me. Overall, Roadhouse was a huge disappointment and not a movie I will go back to like the classic Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. At number 7, guys, we have Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, number 2. Now, I'm just as shocked that this wasn't at the bottom of my list, but honestly, this was a fun time. I had a good, enjoyable time in the theater with my wife watching Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. There was a lot of blood, and there was some honey this time around, which I appreciated, and really the bar for Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 was just to be better than the first film, because that first film was a dumpster fire of a movie, so if this movie was better, I was going to enjoy it more. And I did enjoy it more. I thought there were some unique kills from Winnie the Pooh in this movie. I like the fact that he carried a bear trap. I thought Owl was the best new character to this franchise. Really dug what they did with him. And I like how they explained away how these creatures are very human-like and very animal-like at the same time. Really, the biggest letdown for me in this movie was Tigger. I think if they had stuck the landing with Tigger and they had made him sort of funny at the same time being horrifying, I feel like that's what they were going for, and they just stopped short of that. But had they actually crossed that line and made him a funny, good time in the theater, this movie might be a couple spots higher. I really mean that. The character of Tigger was really the holdback in this movie for me personally, and I hope that they do him better the next time around. They did Winnie the Pooh better this time around. They did Owl better. Well, they did Owl for the first time, but it was still a better character. And even Piglet didn't have much to do in this movie, but was still better than the first time around. So I have faith in them that Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 3 will have Tigger being what we want. Because these directors, for whatever reason, tend to listen to the fans and give them what they want because they improved upon the last movie. So Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 was a fun time, and I hope you all get the chance to check it out, whether it's in theaters or checking it out on streaming. At number 6, guys, a movie that I wanted to put higher on this list. I really did. It's Ghostbusters, The Frozen Empire. Had a lot of hope going into this movie. I actually really enjoyed Ghostbusters Afterlife. Thought what they did with all of the Ghostbusters from the original movie while building a new cast was done really well. And you get into this new movie and you do have the original Ghostbusters back and you do have this new cast of Ghostbusters from Ghostbusters Afterlife. But for whatever reason, toward the beginning of the second act, they decide to split everyone else off and make it about the character of Phoebe and Phoebe alone, which is weird because you've got characters in there played by Finn Wolfhard, Paul Rudd, where I was like, okay, you could have gone with direction with more of them, all of them, but instead you just decide to really focus on the Phoebe character. And then this big horned entity that you're really excited about from the trailers doesn't end up showing up till the very end of the movie. And so it just feels like you're sort of waiting for that thing to come out the whole time. That said, there are some good jokes in this movie. Bill Murray does have one funny line of dialogue, but it is sort of spoiled by the trailers. And unfortunately, they don't do much with his character otherwise.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Paul Rudd is really the leading character in this movie for comedy, and he does a good job with it, but I've seen Ghostbusters done better, and I wish we had gotten a little more of those movies in this movie, and we didn't. It's a family-friendly, safe Ghostbusters movie. That's the best thing I could say about this. It's all right. At number 5, guys, we have Godzilla XCon, The New Empire, the longest title for no reason. There's not even really a new empire. But with that said, at number 5, we do have the new Godzilla film. And listen, when it comes to the big monster kaiju battles in this movie, I enjoyed those. Those were fun to watch. Whether it was Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla and Kong teaming up to take on some new monsters that we haven't seen in this universe yet, there was a good amount of kaiju battles, especially in that last scene. But overall, the human plot, the human element of this movie is lacking more than any other Godzilla universe movie that they've made in the last several years. And when this movie is coming off the heels of a movie like Godzilla Minus One, where the human element really made me go back to the theater 3 times, this movie felt like a disappointment because the human element is just lacking. There's a main storyline about a little girl who's from Skull Island who can communicate with Kong, but you already had that in the previous Godzilla vs. Kong movie. So when you get into this movie, you're just like, all right, I've already seen her go through her problems that she has. And ultimately, it feels like they're just forcing these humans in to give the audience exposition because we're too dumb to realize why these monsters are fighting each other. They're monsters, there's good guys, there's bad guys. We know the details, let them fight.
Let them fight.
But unfortunately, in this movie, they feel like they need to have humans exposition dump on you in every other scene between monster fights so that you can follow along. The way I personally feel is that if you're not going to develop the human characters past just exposition dumping, don't bother at all. Just give us a bunch of monsters, we'll figure it out from there. At number 4 is a new horror movie starring Sydney Sweeney, and it is immaculate. This movie goes off the rails at the end of the movie, and I had a really fun time with it. It's a movie that is a pretty traditional setup for a Immaculate Conception horror genre movie, where Sydney Sweeney plays a nun who goes to Italy to be part of a convent there, and then shortly after becoming a nun at this convent, she gets pregnant, but she's never had sex before, and they don't know how she was able to get pregnant. So certain people at the convent start treating her poorly, while most of the people at the convent start treating her like the next Virgin Mary, because they believe that if she got pregnant, she must be having the next Jesus Christ. And of course, there's nefarious things going on, and the movie is pretty standard. Like I said, in the first act of this movie, even bleeding into the second act of this movie, is pretty standard as far as a woman getting pregnant in a horror movie or a nun horror movie. Like, it's pretty standard. It's got some jump scares in it, creepy people doing creepy things throughout, people watching her from afar. Like, it's got all of those standard things. But the third act of this movie, I could not have predicted. I assumed it was going to end pretty dark in a, oh man, well, that's terrible that that happened to the leading character in this movie. But no, it's dark for completely different reasons. And while I'm not a gore for the sake of gore person, something I complained about at the beginning of this video where I talked about stop motion, this movie has gore with a reason. It has tragic, horrific moments for a reason, and you as the audience member are with her on this journey where she is doing some messed up stuff at the end. Really enjoyed this movie. It is a movie I would highly recommend to any horror fans, but be advised, there's a lot of gore. I had a good time with it. Now, before getting into my top 3, it's time for some Pure Leaf tea. Pure Leaf tea. They don't sponsor me, but they should. With that said, let's get into my top 3 for March of 2024. At number 3, we have Ricky, Sten, Nikki, another direct-to-streaming movie. It is currently streaming on Amazon Prime, and I had a fun time with this movie. The trailer did look like it was going to be a lot funnier than it ended up being, but this movie still had a lot of heart, a lot of brotherhood in it, and the comedy worked for me for the most part. It's about a group of friends who, when they were kids, created this fictional character of Ricky Stenicki to get out of a bad situation, and then realized once that worked that they could use this fictional character to get out of things throughout their entire lives, even when they're adults. They'll tell their wives, their friends, their family. They'll tell them, hey, we got to get away and help our friend Ricky. He's going through it. And as it turns out, he's in Vegas. So we're going to go be at the hospital with him. But when they get there, they're having fun at the gambling tables and they're just having a good time. Well, the family starts to catch on and they realize they need to actually produce this Ricky Stenicki character. They know that if they get exposed, if their lie is really brought to light, that they will ruin all these different relationships that they have in their life. And they don't want that to happen. So they go to the extreme and they hire a guy played by John Cena to be Ricky Stenicki. Well, he takes it all in stride and starts just being Ricky Stenicki on screen, and it's pretty funny what he does. I had a really good time with this movie. I think John Cena can bring that crude humor pretty well. I think he's one of the few people that's still willing to bring that crude humor no matter what he has to do. And I had a fun time watching it. This is a movie I'll watch again in the future, and it's a movie I recommend to all of you. If you want a decent comedy, check out Ricky Stenicki.
Oh, Rod.
It's not what you think it is. It's just piss.
At number 2, guys, is going to be the most controversial pick this month and maybe even the most controversial pick this year. Not to put at number 1. Don't hate me, but if you're going to, do it in the comment section. It is Dune Part 2.
Let's go get this son of a bitch.
Now, here's the thing. Dune Part 2 visually is beautiful, and that's going to be the reason that a lot of reviewers put this at the top of their list. I get it. This is number 2 on my list, so I'm not saying it was a piece of garbage. I thought visually this movie was beautiful. I also thought that the actors in this movie did a great job with their roles that they had, although one of my biggest gripes for this movie is that there were so many characters in this movie that we never really felt like we got to spend any time with them. They kept jumping from one character to the next. Now, granted, Timothée Chalamet probably gets the most screen time. Javier Bardem is a close second because they had a lot of story in this movie, but even like the big villains in this movie, I wanted to see more of someone like Austin Butler's character, but instead they kind of showed you a little glimpse and they were like, all right, we can't really dive into this too much further. You'll see him again later. And then you see him later and like, okay, you get a little bit more of him now, but you're not going to see much of him again. And it's just like, they didn't spend any time with them. You have people like Christopher Walken in this movie, Florence Pugh in this movie, who honestly, you can forget they were even in it because of how little they show up in this movie. So yes, you had some great talent coming to the screen, but ultimately, I don't feel like they had enough time in an almost 3-hour long movie. So I don't know if the best thing to do would be to say, okay, split this again and make it 2 and 3, but they're already talking about there could be another Dune Eternal, I think, down the line. Now, I've never read the books, but my other big issue I had with this movie was the fact that it didn't feel fresh to me. Like, I get that this story was written so far back, even beyond Star Wars, that so much material was stolen from this and put into sci-fi movies ever since then, but because of that, the plot line in this movie just didn't feel fresh to me. Now, again, I've never read the book, and I know a lot of people that have said this movie was one of the best movies they've ever seen, and that's great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm not saying it's bad. I've got it at number 2, but I'm just trying to give you reasons why I put this at number 2, because again, it just didn't feel fresh to me. While it was visually beautiful, while the acting was great, I wanted more of that acting, and I didn't feel like I really got it, and I wanted more from the story, and I personally didn't feel like I got that either. All right, guys, we got to the top of my list, the best of the best in March of 2024. And if you've been keeping track and if you've been watching the videos I've putting on my channel, you probably know this already. This is a movie I just got to see last weekend, and it is Late Night with the Devil. This is a horror film in the found footage genre, but they do found footage in such a fresh and unique way that I had an incredible time with this movie. I didn't even know it was found footage from the trailers. That's how well they were able to hide it in the trailer. And when you get into the movie, it doesn't even affect you. It's not shaky cam to the point of you not wanting to watch this thing. They do this cool trick where they show you color when you're on the stage live with them on this late night television show, but they'll flip it to black and white when they're showing you behind the scenes. And it works so damn well. I had a great time with Late Night with the Devil. I thought David Dastmalchian portrayed this character of Jack Delroy to perfection. I thought him as a late night talk show television host was great. And you know what? I love late night television talk shows, so maybe it just was right up my alley and it worked for me in that regard. And the fact that it took place in the 70s on Halloween night, I thought that was a cool vibe to the movie too. Overall, I had a great time with Late Night with the Devil. It is my favorite movie in March of 2024, and it's my favorite horror movie so far this year. maybe my favorite movie so far this year. There hasn't been a lot of good movies, so the bar is pretty low, but Late Night with the Devil was a great time. It comes to Shudder later this month. I highly recommend it to all of you. I can't wait to check it out again. And that's my ranked list for March of 2024 from worst to best. Let me know where we agree or disagree in the comment section down below. Again, I appreciate you guys checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my March 2024 movies ranked from worst to best. If this is the first time you're finding my channel and you want to check out more of my content, I would invite you to subscribe to my channel because there's a ton of content on there, whether it's movie reviews, quick reactions, Blu-ray talk. I even do a whole walkthrough of my movie theater room down here. I've done it twice, actually, so if you want to check that video out, it's on my channel. With all that said, if you want to watch any of the other videos on my channel, well, I've got all of my 2023 movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.